I would like to first introduce the host of the evening, Nikhil Taneja. Can we have a huge round of applause for him, please? Nikhil is a Mumbai-based writer, producer, entrepreneur, and youth mental health advocate. He's the co-founder and chief of Yuva, a Gen Z-driven youth media and impact organization. He serves on the board of Girl Rising and is also the creator and host of the viral chat show on positive masculinity, Be a Man Yaar. Can we hear it once again for Nikhil? I would like to invite our first speaker on stage, Rohini Nilekani. Rohini is an author and philanthropist, a member of the Giving Pledge, and currently the chairperson of Rohini Nilekani Philanthropies, as well as a co-founder and director of Ekstep, a non-profit education platform. She founded Arghyam, a foundation for sustainable water and sanitation, and co-founded Pratham Books, a non-profit children's book publisher. Rohini is also a published author with Penguin Books India and has self-published the book Samaj Sarkar Bazaar. And now I would like to call upon the stage our last speaker, but definitely not the least, widely regarded as one of the greatest number 3 batsmen in cricket, former head coach of the Indian men's cricket team, Rahul Dravid. Rahul embodies leadership, adaptability, and focus. He made his international debut in 1996 and scored over 10,000 runs in both tests and ODIs, even taking on wicket-keeping duties for the team's needs. Since retiring, he has coached and mentored various Indian teams and needs no further introduction except to say that he is also the recipient of the Arjuna, Padma Shri and Padma Bhushan awards. As head coach of the Indian cricket team, it was fascinating to see him create an environment in which the team went on to win 10 in a row in the ODI World Cup and the historic T20 World Cup. So very warm welcome to our panel here. Over to you, Nikhil.
I didn't know that we just started. Wow, welcome, Rohini and Rahul. Rahul, how's your mental health doing after hearing this kind of a cheer?
Yeah, a little bit of applause after you retire. You gotta get, after you finish playing and stuff, right? Sometimes it's nice to get this. No, I'm just kidding. I think, look, I think it is one of those things, right? As sportsman, I think you kind of live a life in the public space. And then you move on, and hopefully life becomes a little bit more private as you move on from that. At least I've hoped that it would be for me. But truly grateful. Thank you very much.
My mental health today has been a bit low because of the India-New Zealand result. But being here, hearing their cheers, I hope that's turning it around a little bit for me. I hope it's doing that for you as well.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I was on the car on the way here. Really wishing that Ashwin and Jadeja could pull off a miracle. It obviously hasn't happened, but that's life and that's sport, and I think that's the beauty of sport, that you always get another chance, you get a second chance, and there's disappointments and there's opportunities to learn from it. But I think that's one thing sport always teaches you. It teaches you that you are going to have tough days, you're going to have some days when things aren't going to work well for you. But there's always another chance that you can always bounce back, that you always come back, and you have to come back. And I think sportsmen learn how to deal with these situations a lot better than a lot of people do.
Yeah, that's a lot of life lessons right there. We're going to come back to that. But Rohini, you've put this all together. Can we have a round of applause for her, please? This is insane. What a brilliant, brilliant event. Just the energy of the people in the room today. All the spaces that I'm seeing, just everyone seems happy. They seem energized. And thank you so much for doing that. How is your mental health? And I want to start meaningfully by asking that. How are you feeling right now after seeing what you've been able to pull off?
I am feeling wonderful to be here with Rahul, Dravid and you. I'm feeling wonderful to be here with all these people. All day I'm so happy. I was worried about the rain. Will people come? And here you all are. And thank you for coming. And really, it's my team at RNP, Natasha, Sahana, Gautam, everyone who has put this whole thing together. So it's not me, they've spent days on this. And thank you, the public of Bengaluru and other places who have come here for responding to India's first National Mental Health Festival. It's a Sambrama.
That deserves a larger round of applause, I think. So, Rohini, there's a question that you and I have been chatting about that I know you want to ask Rahul before we move on to some of the mental health stuff. Please go for it.
Oh, that was quick. Okay. So all of us want to know this. We've seen an ad of yours, or 2 or 3, in which you
got to keep doing something, Rohini.
in which you have made some confessions, okay? That you are some Indira Nagar ka gunda hu main. So what I want to know is that the real you or is this the real view? And you can tell us the truth. Which one is the real Rahul Dravid? Are we dreaming or is this real life that way? Ulta research kya hai?
Sometimes I wish I could behave like that all the time. It would be more useful actually in some situations, I think. But no, look, it was quite a unique ad and it was quite unique for me to do as well. I don't generally get angry very quickly, but yeah, for that, and it was quite embarrassing as well. Sometimes, you can just think about it was done in Bombay, on a street. And even though you know that the people around you are mostly actors and they're people who know what is going to happen now, still standing there on the thing and shouting and smashing things was just so out of character for me and so different that it, took me some time to get used to it. I think those directors were probably a bit frustrated with, the way, how many times I was having to do it to get it right. So, but yeah, it was good fun.
But why did you do it? I'm quite surprised. Why did you do it?
My mom's asked me the same question as well. But no, I think just something different. I thought it was a great idea. It was something different. It was unique. And I think, some of the ideas sometimes you can't take yourself too seriously. You can have some fun with things and, everything can't be about trying to worry about how things pan out or what you're trying to protect or some image. Sometimes things are fun, and you've just got to, for me it was just an opportunity to not take myself too seriously. Yeah.
Anyway, I must say, everybody raise your hands if you think so. That Rahul was also very attractive. What do you people say? There, you can smash this bottle before you leave the stage.
So I want to say that this question is relevant to this room because the answer to this is great for our mental health. So it's great that we've asked that. But I have a follow-up question. Have you seen Chak De India?
Yes, yeah.
So there's a sequence in the film where Shah Rukh Khan actually tells his team that her team ke andar ek gunda hota hai, is team ka gunda main hu. Given that we're talking about gundagardi, was that you when you were the coach of the country? Were you the gunda in that team? Or was there someone else that you'd like to tell us about?
No, I don't think, no, that was not me, certainly. If I said that, my teammates would actually, all the guys in the team would laugh at me. I'd be getting messages saying, no. No, that's, I don't think you really needed a gunda. I mean, if anything, I don't really think there was a gunda in the team. I think the team was really well led by Rohit. And my job really as a coach is to support the leaders in the team. Cricket teams, honestly, are run by senior players. They should run it, and you are there to support them and guide them and help them, and that really was my role. So it wasn't really to try and become a gunda out there, or it was just really to be a support act to the guys who are actually doing the hard yards in the middle.
No, we love you for that, exactly, Rahul. Everyone, genuinely, the whole country loves you for that grace and the dignity that you have always portrayed as a sportsperson, as a coach.
I've got to really be worried about my mental health after this, actually. My wife's going to say I'm coming there with a swollen head. So I think we should just quickly move on.
We are moving on now. So I'm going to, given that this conversation is obviously, and this whole festival is around mental health, Rohini, I want to start by asking you, unfortunately in our country, even now, for a lot of people, especially in, tier 2, tier 3, there is an understanding that mental health is still almost seen like a amiron ki bimari. It's almost seen like a foreign illness. It's not something that most people feel like can happen to them. There is a lot of conversation now. There's a normalization of that conversation that's been happening. But I feel like sometimes it's happening in a lot of the urban spaces and not everywhere. And for you particularly, as someone who has been funding so much of this work, I actually want to know that when you were younger, and I'm just younger, when you were younger, when you were growing up in this, in a world where now there was not even that conversation at all happening. Did you even know what mental health was when, as a young person, as a child, at your home? Was there ever a conversation about that?
Actually, I'm not so sure, Nikhil, that I agree with you, because if I look at my childhood and I look at the extended family and community, there were a lot of people who were different. Today we call them differently able, or we say neurodiverse, or we use very interesting phrases. But at that time we would know, especially I remember one distant cousin who was definitely different, and everybody just accepted that. It was not like that person was put away somewhere or locked up or anything like that. And he would be there at weddings and festivals or whatever it is. He would be different and we would be different. We would be with him like us. So I'm not very sure that's true because all the prevalence of mental illness is all over the world and certainly rural, urban, everywhere. And while yes, there have been stigmas and while yes, I think the conversation has happened, maybe not in the same way as it happens today. So what is happening today is very critical so that we can face things head on. So many new therapies coming, so much research happening. Human brain, finally we are beginning to understand this much of it, which we didn't even 10 years ago. So it's very good times in this mental health space. But I think Indian society did deal with it. It's not all bad news.
No, absolutely. I think my question was more from a lens of there is vocabulary that exists about it right now. There wasn't such a vocabulary that existed earlier.
True.
And even right now, I feel some of that vocabulary is very urbanized. It is, when you talk about mental health from a colloquial lens or in regional languages, local languages, like I remember growing up, my mother saying, "Unko ghabrahat ho rahi hai," which now I recognize as possibly anxiety. But at that point of time, you wouldn't know what that ghabrahat is, and then you downplay it. You're just like, "Haan, mama, matlab, itna stress kyun leti hai, tension kyun leti hai," without really trying to solve for it. So I'm asking from that lens, when was the first time you had an understanding that, oh, there is something called mental health, and this is what it is?
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm a journalist like you, so I had to cover stuff like this in my profession. But I myself went through, when my children were very small, mujhe bhi ghabrahat hoti thi. I used to think that something is going to happen to them every day. Then I realized that it's a kind of panic attack about the children. When I was alone with them, I would think something would happen to them. And then I actually went and sought help to say, how do I get out of it, and got over it. So yeah, I realized that it's a long, very big spectrum of mental health issues that one could face. But that's when I took it all seriously. And I'm so glad a few years ago I decided to support serious work in mental health. A personal journey always triggers something like this. And I've since then been very interested in developments in mental health research around the world.
No, absolutely, and kudos to you for that, Rohini. Rahul, of course, as a cricket player, you started really early, right? You started in your childhood almost, and then you were part of so many under 12, under 15, under 17 teams. Cricket, you've often said in your interviews, right, that people always see the successes, but there's so many failures that happen in between them. How, at a younger age, at that point of time when you're in an under 15 team or under 17 team, and then you get out and you have your first heartbreak when you're not able to score in a match, at that early age, how were you able to navigate what was going on in your head whenever you would face a failure?
So I think the good thing with sport, or the good thing with what I was doing was, it was not something that was forced onto me, right? It's not like my parents forced me to play cricket, or my parents loved, my dad loved cricket, but it wasn't like, oh, you have to play cricket, or this is what you should do. I just loved it and played the game. So for me, it was really, it was like a hobby, and I was doing something that I really loved. So the early years were always a lot of fun, right? Because you were just playing with friends, and your early memories of coming home and throwing your school bag and running out so that you could play with your friends was what it was all about. It was really a lot of fun. It's actually only later on, it's only later on when you start thinking about so getting out and getting out in those times, or scoring some runs, it was nice, and you felt a little disappointed when you got out, but it never felt like this was life-changing. Or it's only later on, I think, as you go on and you start thinking about your career, and you start thinking about what you want to do in life, and you say, okay, I want to make sport my career, or cricket is something I want to do for a living, is when sometimes the pressure builds up a little bit more, right? And that's when you've made some decisions around, okay, I've sort of given up an education or a series. I still studied, but I've decided not to pursue education that seriously and commit myself to playing cricket, because that is something you need to do. If you want to play competitive cricket at an international level and compete with the kind of players that are playing at that level, then you've got to go all in. It's very difficult to go halfway houses there. So once you went all in, then the pressure builds up, because then you have to perform, you have to do well, you have to get selected, because only when you progress, then you think about being able to pursue cricket as a profession or as a living. And and I've been lucky through that and then through that journey. But yeah, the early years were great fun. I mean, it was just great fun. Played the game, loved it, just enjoyed it. The pressure comes a little bit later on.
You know, at that age, typically, the mental health pressures for a lot of us actually come from our parents. You know, we might be enjoying the work that we do, we might be enjoying the sport we might play, but our parents mostly recognize the need for that career. And was someone who then, as you said, committed to playing sport, and then you had to make sure that there was a career there. At that point of time, you know, do you remember how your parents were with you? Were they supportive when there were disappointments? Because a lot of sports people actually speak a lot about that, and especially cricketers, that it's been hard for them to navigate some of the pressures that have come from their families.
No, I think my parents were brilliant, and the principal in school at St. Joseph's, Father Dennis Coelho, was equally brilliant as well. You know, because to be very honest with you, my parents, my father was a food scientist, my mom taught architecture at Bangalore University, so we came from, sort of educated sort of backgrounds. My brother was doing engineering college, so we were not really it's not like a sporting. Father played a bit of cricket, but it was your sort of typical middle class kind of growing up where education was the paramount this thing. In those days, cricket wasn't really seen as a viable profession because, when we think of cricket today and you think about the IPL and you think about the kind of money that even the first class players are making today, it's a pretty sizable amount of money. So what's been, I think, fantastic to see over the last sort of decade and a half is that cricket and sport, and I only just don't mean cricket, I mean even today women's cricket. It's phenomenal how the kind of money women's cricket or women's cricketers are making. And I'm not just talking of the Smriti Mandhanas of the world, but even down the line, I think the girls are making a pretty decent amount of money. And so a lot of other sports as well, people are making decent amount of money. So you can think about sport as a profession, but when you're going back to 1980s and 89 and 90, everyone's thinking about nahi yaar, college RVC में admission मिलना है, BMS में admission मिलना है, engineering college कर लो. And the thing about being a cricketer in that time was actually you could get admission in these colleges because RVC and BMS is, in those days, for some of you who might remember, were actually very strong college teams. People like Anil Kumble and all played at RVC. So they were very strong college teams. So they would actually, look out for these young boys coming in who were playing cricketers. And, so when I was in 10th standard, there were a lot of, my colleagues who were in engineering college were telling me, you take science in 11th and 12th, we'll guarantee you a seat in RVC or BMS and all that because you play good cricket and we want to have a good cricket team. And you can imagine how tempting that's to my parents, right? They're thinking, oh, engineer to ban jayega, you can imagine that. But, luckily for me, my maths was shocking. So in 10th standard, I said, this is not what I want to do. And I think they were very supportive. I think, very supportive in saying that, I think maybe go down a commerce route and we'll see how that pans out over the next 4 or 5 years. But education was a very important part of being at home and studying and getting the right marks. And I think that they put more pressure on me, I think, on that than worrying about my cricket. You just ensure that you don't neglect your studies in that sense. And the principal in school, I know my parents were really worried. I got selected, I think, in some under 15 game. And we were on this tour for some 3 weeks or 4 weeks on some tour. And I missed the midterm exams or something like that. And my parents were panicking. And if the principal, I can tell you, if the principal at that stage had said, no, Mr. and Mrs. Dravid, we are not going to redo these exams or we are not going to support your son, my parents would have said, don't go for the tour. You stay at school because we've not put you in the school to play cricket. You're here to study. But he was brilliant. And he said, father said, look, you should go. And I think your son's doing well. He has a great opportunity and he should go out and play. And, don't worry about his studies. We'll sort it out. So I think having people like that who support you at a young age, mentors and people who back you and support you, I think is very, very important. And I was lucky.
No, it's so fortunate to hear that because a lot of people who have actually gone through mental health challenges don't get that support. I remember the line that I've also done engineering. Obviously, I'm a cliche in that sense. My parents told me very clearly, they said, पहले engineering खत्म कर लो, फिर जो करना life में करना. It was always like, how in the US you always see that people are sent for gap years, go explore 1 year of your life and then you can do whatever you want. For India, going to engineering college is gap year. Take that 4 years, uske baad tumhe jo bhi karna career ke andar. So I finished that and then I got into media.
Yeah, I might have been able to wrangle a job in Nandan's company or something if I'd gone down that route.
Pretty much.
But look, and rightly so. I know we say about this and people say, oh, yaar, support nahi kiya. The percentage of kids making it, I think there's Some stats in saying in sport, you have a 0.001% or 0.005% chance of making it as a cricketer of the number of kids who are playing. I mean, which parent wants to take that level of chance, right? Which parent wants to take that level of risk? So, I mean, rightly, today it's easier to take that risk.
No, but what about you? You knew this. You knew this. Why did you take that risk? Were you thinking with a hat or with a bat?
I was just wanting to play. That's a really good question, actually. But I think even I had my worries and doubts. I'll be honest with you. When you are going through college and you're studying, and even though I took commerce, and you see all your other colleagues, right? You obviously, your friends, and some of them are preparing for a CA examination. There are other guys preparing to do an MBA, and saying, as you get to that sort of second year BCom and third year BCom, all the conversation around your group or your peers and your friends is all about, hey, where can I get to an admission abroad, or I'm trying to crack the IIM exam, and they're all discussing that and they're chatting about that, and you're like thinking, ooh, because there's so much uncertainty in sport. So certainly at that point of time, there is a level of stress, there's a level of worry, and you don't doubt yourself, but you certainly think about the consequences. You think about the consequences. You've taken there are folk on the road, and you've taken one folk, right? And you could have taken the other folk. Maybe one you didn't. You've taken a folk you love, to be very honest with you. And you've taken a folk on the road, but there are consequences to those things. And sometimes, they are tricky consequences. And you do think about them. I mean, it was something when I look back in college and I look back at that time, it was a time when I thought about this. And, it did make you nervous. It did stress you out a little bit. And I was lucky things worked out. And panned out the way they did.
Rohini, Rahul spoke about community, positive communities. We've always talked about mental health and the pressures that we have had sometimes from people. And a lot of the pressures sometimes we also put on ourselves. Like he said, when he decided at one point of time that, I have to make this as a career, there is a stress that comes on you. Do you remember in your early career, what kind of a stress, did you have any stress that you would take on yourself, especially as a young ambitious woman at a time where, women did not have as much agency, and still is, a difficult thing to do. But any of the stresses that you remember that you went through that you were able to navigate?
Luckily I went into journalism. And there were fantastic women journalists in India always. And it was not particularly a sector where there was that much discrimination. Of course, I would be expected to cover some of the softer sort of stories than my male colleagues would. I didn't mind so much because I was in Bombay and I got to meet all the Bollywood celebrities and the cricket celebrities. So I didn't protest too much. But I guess I say it's profession dependent, because when Nandan co-founded Infosys, and we lived for 7 years out of 4 suitcases traveling from place to place, because in those days they used to actually write the software at the client site. And I didn't have a working visa, but I could still freelance and write for newspapers and magazines in India. So in that sense, I was lucky that I didn't face too much discrimination. I don't know what would have happened if I'd risen in that profession and had to become an editor or something. That's when those kind of discriminations play out in my experience.
But what would you say was a supportive community that you had at any point of time when you did go through any stress, especially trying to navigate a career? Because a lot of us, in the early years, it becomes, as Rahul said, it becomes so difficult. You have so much self-doubt. Am I going to make it? Am I not going to make it? And then, again, I speak to so many young people and I realize a lot of the pressures are always comparative, right? As he said, there might be somebody who's going to IIM, somebody who's going to IIT, what am I doing with my life? That's the amount of money they are making. That's what they are doing. How do I navigate this? So do you remember if you had a community, or how would you navigate when moments like this happen in your early years?
I must admit, today journalism is very different from what it used to be in the 80s and 90s. We were a pretty laid-back community, we were reporting, there was not that much pressure on us, we would write what we liked, we were not challenged too much, we would be able to do some fairly challenging stories and get the support of our editors. So I guess it was a good time in Indian journalism that I went through. So just the support of my editors, Mohini Bullar, Veer Sangri, many people that I worked with in those days that supported us when we wanted to write something slightly hatke. So I think that does matter. Like he spoke of the father in his school. It does matter. The people, your college professors, your senior bosses, it does matter whether they are supporting you when you're trying to get ahead.
If I may ask, what were the tools that either of you put for yourself when you would have a failure in front of you? Any kind of failure, how, because that's a lot of, especially in sports, Rahul, you need to figure out what are those strategies that always work for you, because you might see so many failures on a daily basis, It's not just the failure of, I lost the match or I won the match. Sometimes a bad ball, every one of that is a mini, small loss that you might have to overcome. What is a tool that both of you have used in your early years? And I'm asking early years, particularly for the young people over here who have to navigate so much, especially in the age of social media, where you're constantly bombarded with information and you feel like you almost feel lesser at all the times going forward. What are the tools that you made that help you navigate those years?
I don't know if there's like specific tools that I came up with, but certainly I think for me, just thinking separately of myself as, it's one thing to think of yourself as just a cricketer, right? And I think that is sort of kind of in some ways differentiating what you do to who you are is something that has kind of helped me over the years. I think if you think about like my cricket career or my cricket coach, I've always thought of it as something that, it's just something that I do. It's a job, like it's something I do. And then the rest of it is who you actually are, right? And if you, sometimes the problem comes when you mix the two, and we all do, and I'm not perfect at it, and it's not that I've never mixed the two, but like at times, I've found it just easier to say that, like, who are you, right? And in the end of the day, you're always somebody's husband, or you're someone's son, or you're someone's friend, you're someone's sister, or whatever. You have a life outside of actually what you do. And sometimes the problem is when you sort of like confuse the profession and it sort of gets into the way. So I think it's, if you think that, okay, I am this particular person and this is what I want to be and these are my set of values, or this is, how I want to live my life and this is what I'm comfortable with, and I'm looking at that. And then my profession is just something that I do. So if I have a good day in my profession, that's great. If I have a bad day in my profession, that's disappointing, that's sad. But it shouldn't change who you are. If you can just kind of differentiate that, and I try and tell that to a lot of the younger guys today as well. It's a lot tougher in today's day and age, and I think it's really challenging in today's day and age for exactly the reasons that you said. And I think, like Rohini said, it was a much simpler time growing up. In our time, I remember being in college or being in India of the 1980s and, a little bit in the early 90s as well, in college in those days. And everyone was the same, right? There wasn't like you had 25 brands or you had 25. Everyone, either you had a ambassador, or you had Fiat, or you had a Maruti, and that was it. Like everyone is like today, you could like, go from top spectrum. And so I think what you could see today, even like people who had a lot of riches or were successful and financially very successful, they didn't, they couldn't flaunt it because there was nothing to flaunt, really. And so, today sometimes that you can see that, right? I think you can see the kind of holidays where people are going to or posting stuff or putting stuff on there. Oh, I'm in this holiday, I'm in this restaurant, and I find all that.
But do you think even for sports people, there's a very different now sort of goal what success means? It's not just doing well in your career, you also have to be rich, you also have to flaunt yourself on social media, you have to be so many things. Is that true?
I hope not. I hope that people don't see it that way. If you were to go and see it that way, and if you were to go and think about success in your cricketing career or sporting career as, having more likes or having more followers, then I think you're in trouble. I think people, I think in the end of the day, it's what you see as your success. I think that is really important. What do you grade as success in somebody and in yourself, really? So I think each one will deal with that differently. My way, I think, of dealing with that was in some ways to try and keep that a little bit as different as I possibly could.
I honestly find it unbelievable that you're saying that, because for all of us as fans, it almost seemed like there was no other Rahul Dravid. It was only the person who cared about Team India, cared about cricket. The moniker given to you, the wall, was always something that all of us really believed in. In fact, this is a very bad joke I'm going to crack. It's not a joke, it's true. You were the first poster on my wall. So I always love telling everybody that I have the wall on my wall. I'm really sorry about that. But this is a true childhood story. It's just something I have to bring up. But there was a moniker given to you. Did that tag ever become tough for you to figure? How did you process that tag, especially when there was always this pressure that, okay, Rahul was going to come, everything's going to be fine. And
by not thinking, I never thought about myself as a wall, or, I didn't put that pressure on myself, just because people were saying something, or people were saying, oh, Rahul has to come and he will the guy who will do it. That's not how I thought. I was just playing a game I loved. I was trying to contribute to the team. I was trying to do the best I can. And I wasn't trying to live up, I think, whatever people, I would of course hear the wall. I mean, it's a bit unnerving when you're walking in an airport, somebody, hey, wall, somebody. I'm not sure you're that close that you can call me that. But anyway, but it's like, I honestly didn't like to live up to that. I mean, I have never tried to live up to any of these names or these things that people say about you. I've never tried to live up to that. It never even crossed my mind that just because, some newspaper editor or some journalist somewhere sat down and wrote that. I'm not sure.
Okay. No. Rahul, you sound too good to be true, yaar.
No, what?
So tell me, no man is a hero to his wife. What would Vijeta say about this wall business?
She'd like me to be less of a wall at home, I think. Yeah, that's true. But
Rohini, you have the best questions. I'm feeling right now.
Sorry.
Yeah, I'm feeling like what he was talking about, the comparison. I'm just like, wait, I don't have as good questions as she has. This happens to everyone, right? So actually, again, I want to talk about that. How do you navigate? Because you've both, you obviously reached a pinnacle of success. How do you navigate this comparison that you're constantly, like you mentioned, seeing those pictures and people living this good life, etc. But how do you navigate that in your head? How do you get over it? Please give us tips, that's for both of you.
Get over what in my case? I'm not a
Just
wall.
the comparison.
What do I have
just
to
looking
get
at
over?
others who are doing better than you, in some way or the other. And it could be at any aspect of your life, right? There's always this comparison that's gotten magnified and amplified over the last few years because of social media.
To be very honest, I've not felt that. I've not had to feel that competition, because I was not as ambitious as Rahul, or Nandan for that matter. So I didn't have to worry about that competition. I'll tell you what began to bother me, and I've written about this before, so it's not a big secret, what I had to deal with, and I wasn't very good at it. When Infosys had its public issue and we suddenly became wealthy. And we thought of ourselves as middle class, good values, decent people who, in India, when we were growing up, wealthy people were not looked at in a very good light, because at that time, wealth was not necessarily made. Okay, let's not go there. I think you understood. But and of course, in Infosys was so proud that it was driven by values. We made money the right way. But even then, having to deal with that actually took more out of me than what you are asking. And it took me a very long while to settle down and be sensible about the wealth and see it as an opportunity to do what I would have always liked, which is to see a much better, more equitable society, and to put myself at that level of doing that work. So for me, that was the biggest challenge that I had to face. Not so much competition with other people, yeah.
How did you overcome? Because again, I'm
not
coming
really
back.
Well. It took me a while, and I behaved very badly, I think, because I didn't know what I was doing. I was doing some philanthropy learning. It took me a while to settle down. And then, as I said, once Nandan and I decided that we have to use this wealth in the right way, that wealth has a responsibility in society, then I became very passionate about all that I was doing. And then every day it was about that. And the failures were about that. Oh my God, we should have done this differently. We should have done this work better. Then we had to go through those kind of failures and say, in our philanthropic work, how could we have done better? The first thing that I set up was called Nagrik, for safer roads, when one of my very dear friends died in a senseless road accident. After that, after a few months after that, I helped to set up something called Nagrik for safer roads. And believe me, we had absolutely no impact on road safety because we didn't know what to do. And that was such a big failure that I had to learn from it. So the next thing I did was a little less of a failure, and so on and so on. And today, here we are at this mental health festival. But we should ask him.
Yeah.
No, I think Rohini put it in, I couldn't have put it better than the way she did, and she spoke about it actually brilliantly. I think just learning from those failures, and just constantly learning and just constantly looking to evolve and grow, because I think one of the things in cricket, in sport, it's actually a game of failure. I mean, for all that I get applauded for and all the successes that I've had, just the very nature of the sport means that you actually fail more than you succeed. And I mean, I'm not meaning that to be humble. That's just a fact. I mean, it's just a fact of the sport. The nature of the sport is that you fail much more than you succeed. So you've got to actually really learn how to deal with that and ensure that that doesn't affect you, sort of going forward, or doesn't impact your career. And then just learning, I think learning from those experiences, learning from that, being reflective about them, and I think that's something that you have to constantly keep doing, and that's something that's just becomes a part and parcel of life. It's not disappointing. Of course, failure is disappointing, and you lose tournaments, you lose matches. Of course, you get disappointed. But then I think you've got to quickly bounce back and say, okay, what am I learning from this? Because every opportunity is an opportunity to learn. I think we've all heard that, right? I think, failing, you learn more when you fail than you succeed. But if you if you fail well, just failing doesn't necessarily mean you learn, right? If you actually take the time to learn from that failure, which is, going through the whole process of understanding why you failed, what you've done, reflecting on it, it's only then when you actually get the learnings that you can then go back to then use in the next step.
Rahul, if I may ask you, just push you on that. Can you give an example of a failure that you felt that you had in your career that really played on you, and how did you overcome that? And I keep coming back to personal, because I feel like that's also going to really help us all in knowing that, folks that we all admire also go through these issues, but there are ways of overcoming and coming to the other side. Anything that you would like to point out?
Jesus, a lot of, I think, as a cricketer, you're failing a lot. It's a lot of, I've lost a lot of test matches. There's a lot of series that we've lost as a team. Even as a captain, I've had, a lot of losses which have been disappointing. I don't know, even like just for recency bias, if anything, even if you just think about being a coach recently, and then really having a fantastic campaign in the One Day World Cup. It's the tournament's held in India. It captures the imagination of the country. The team's doing exceptionally well. We travel to 10 cities in India. Everywhere we travel, the stadiums are packed, and it's a sea of blue, and you just get a sense of how much this means to the Indian people, the Indian public, and you're so grateful for that support, and you just you're feeling that vibe. And then you sort of play that final in Ahmedabad, and you lose, and I think in a sense that is disappointing. It's really disappointing, because even now, how much ever you rationalize it in your head, saying that it's sport and it can happen, and it still felt like almost like you were on a path and there was a destiny and it was meant to happen, but it didn't. And then I think you just have to pick yourself up after that, and you have to go back and reflect and say, okay, in this journey that we had, what were the things that we did right? And there's obviously we did some things right, and there was a lot of learnings from that, because even when you fail, and even when the campaign doesn't end as the way you'd like, there was a lot of good things in the campaign that we did right, and we need to continue doing that. We need to keep reinforcing those things. There were other things that probably we didn't get right on that particular day, and we need to learn from that, and we need to grow from that as well. So I think, and I think just sometimes, not taking it too personally. I think the loss of winning a World Cup doesn't suddenly make you a bad person, or it doesn't make you lesser in any way. Neither does winning suddenly make you something different. It shouldn't, right? It shouldn't make you anything different just because you happen to win one tournament and, win a World Cup or something 6-8 months later. So I think just that, having that balance and trying to have that balance is something that I think certainly helped in the short term.
Since you're talking about that moment, and thank you so much for taking us through that, because I really appreciate just knowing that it is a tough thing, and for you to publicly acknowledge that it's not very easy sometimes. So thank you for that.
Hey, no. There are many more I can publicly acknowledge. I have no problem publicly acknowledging a lot, and there have been a lot. I just use recency bias. Sure. That's the beauty of being a sportsman, really.
So I want to actually play can we show the picture? So right after that was this moment where recency bias, of course, but right after that failure, there was this also big success where I feel like, is this the first time you have screamed on television outside of Indira Nagar Ka Gunda? Because I have never, like all of us, first it was the emotions that you saw with Virat and Rohit, men crying. It was just a beautiful, wholesome thing to watch. And then suddenly the entire conversation was like, Rahul Dravid screaming? That's Tell us about this as well. I really want to know.
Again, yeah, I mean, yeah, sometimes you do these things and then 2 months later you think, man, what was I doing? I should not. But no, I think at that point of time, I just felt really happy for, obviously I was happy, there's no doubt about it, but I was just happy also for the team, right? I think the team had gone through so much. There were guys on that team who'd been 10, 12 years, guys like Virat and Rohit who hadn't won an ICC tournament, and it just keeps building up. This whole thing about, oh, we've not won ICC tournament, we're a great team, we should win. And to be honest, we should have won because we are playing fantastic cricket. We were playing great cricket 8 months earlier. There's so many people in that support staff, in that team, a part of the team who put in a lot of effort, work really, really hard to get things together, to get things going. And it just felt really nice to have that success for everyone. For the people, like I said, after having gone through like that whole tournament in India and seeing the kind of support and the passion for the game and the love for the cricketers, it almost like felt like you wanted to give something back. You wanted to have them really enjoy one moment of success. So I think it all just came out in that beautiful afternoon in Barbados. It sort of was just, I think, a culmination of a lot of those things when you end up behaving like that.
I hope he gets lots of chances to screen.
I know. This is the last question in this thread, but I really feel like asking you this. Given the last World Cup that we lost in the finals, and then we won in this finals, did you also have like some version of the Shah Rukh Khan 70-minute speech that you gave to your team that made sure that we held on to our nerves?
No, I wish I had Shah Rukh Khan's eloquence and ability to give I'm not a big speech giver. I'll be very honest with you. It's not, I'm not really sure, giving speeches in a dressing room is something that's, I'm not a big believer in big motivational speeches. It's not the way I think. I always used to think about this, right? You give this motivational speech some 3 hours earlier, and then somebody's facing someone bowling 150 kilometers an hour. I bet he's not thinking about what you're saying. He's saying, I better watch that ball. So I think it just kind of puts in perspective your motivational speech that you're trying to give. And motivational speeches have done not much for me, to be very honest. They'd have these. So sometimes, like our analysts, and they like to show. They'll show videos of, and it's usually the background music of some very popular Hindi songs, and basically from Chak De or some, this thing. And they'll show this the night before we have our team meetings. Our video analysts really love showing, a collection of shots guys are playing or great moments in the game to this background music. And I would always go to the video analyst when I was playing. I said, if you show more than one shot of mine, right? Because I wanted that to end. I couldn't wait for that to end because I just could not understand how that was going to help me the next morning when I was facing someone bowling 150, right? But again, I think this is where the learning, I think, for me has been, right? I think that can be motivational to other people. It doesn't have to be just because I didn't find it motivational. And I think if people get motivated by that or they enjoy seeing that, then it's your job as a coach to provide that. It's not that, for me that honestly didn't make much of a difference, but that's not the way you can coach, right? If you have to get a feel of the room, you have to understand there might be people who might really enjoy that and who might feel that that is their routine that gets them in the right space. And then you have to deliver that as a coach because your job is to deliver what they want, not what you feel. So when I was playing, I could tell the guy, no, boss, don't show me because I'm not interested in this at all. I don't see any point in this. But I could see why other people, would get motivated by that.
A note for our filmmakers and writers, those speeches don't work. But even though you said that you don't have Shah Rukh's eloquence, but you have Rahul Dravid's grace, dignity, and awesomeness. And I think that's what we love you for. Rohini, I want to talk to you about empathy, on two fronts that you have worked really, really deeply on. One is that, you've obviously funded NIMHANS, and NCBS. You are also on the board of the Wellbeing Project. You've been doing a lot of work in helping change makers, and focusing on their mental health. I want to, given that unfortunately, this is what it is, right? Every generation ends up being unkind to the, future generations because they have gone through some unkindness. Like I remember in my engineering college, there was this idea of ragging. And every time that we'd ask our seniors that, you didn't like ragging, why are you ragging the next person? But it was exactly because of that reason. That I got ragged, so I want to do that for you. you are one of the few people in this spaces who actually is focusing on the mental health of the next generation. How do we bring about that kind of an empathy? How did you learn it? I mean, if you have gone through people who were supportive to you and you want to talk about that, sure. But I would love to hear, how do we develop that kind of empathy where we can keep our issues separate and then focus on helping people and the movements that are to come?
Yeah, I think my empathy, as you call it, comes from a natural sense since I was a very young child, a natural reaction against injustice. I wouldn't like to see somebody being hurt or something, and I would rather foolishly go and try to do something. It never ended well, never do that. But I think that's where what you're calling empathy comes from, that how can we not want a world where everybody has the same opportunities that I did, or the love that I did in my home? Or we've seen so many people, when we were small, while there was not that much difference between the super billionaires and us, there were definitely beggars outside the car door, and unfortunately post-pandemic in Bangalore, we are seeing them again. Listen, whatever people may say about beggars, you should always, nobody grows up and says, I want to be a beggar, okay? So they are not beggars because that's the profession they chose. So it's all right to help people in need. And so these are the kind of things, I think, that make me do the kind of things that I do. That's nothing much more to say. But I want to ask you a question. I can't help it, okay? I was a journalist. So the question I want to ask you, you run Yuva, and you work with thousands of young people. And we know the forces that are impacting young people today, one of them being social media. Post-pandemic, many global mental health surveys are showing just how many young people, and especially young men, are at risk today of some kind of mental health situation. Tell us briefly, what are you seeing? And what do you think society can do to help younger people?
This is unexpected. I was not expecting to give answers here, but thank you for bringing that up, Rohini. There are two things that you kind of observe when you speak to a lot of younger people. And we have gone to a lot of these road shows where we have heard 10 to 15,000 young people in the age brackets of 18 to 25, I must specify that. And when you start hearing them, and you create these non-judgmental spaces, the first thing that they talk about is how lonely they feel, right? It's loneliness that is something that is a common through line that you hear across everyone, among young people. The reasons for their loneliness actually comes, unfortunately, because of the societal forces that surround them. We spoke a little bit about social media. Parenting is actually a huge thing, unfortunately, where young people just don't feel heard. There is this one insight that I got from the first roadshow that we did, which actually even made me feel a lot more empathetic towards the younger generation, because we constantly keep saying that young people keep looking on their phone, they're always entitled, they're not listening to anyone. The reason they're on their phone is because when they look up, they feel like no one's hearing them. So on the phone, they find supportive communities. They have these niches, on Instagram, on other platforms, where they at least feel like they are, there's somebody who cares about what they have to say. But the moment they look up, the moment they talk to people around them, everyone shuts them down. Whether it is because you're too young, or because of the fact that, I know better, which is actually pretty much demonstratively false right now. In today's world, young people possibly know better than most of us. They don't have the lived experience, and I also feel like there's a burden of empathy that we have put on them, that because they understand that their parents don't understand. So now they have to kind of find a way of also navigating those relationships, that, how should I be nicer to my parents, even though they were not nicer to me? So we're constantly hearing these things. And you've spoken a little bit about men's mental health. The strongest things that you hear about loneliness is from young men, right?
Yes.
I've heard things, Rohini, like on my road shows where, young boys have come up to me and said that I have never heard anyone say, I love you to me in my life.
Yeah.
I have never received a hug in my life.
Yeah.
There was a boy who told me something that, kind of gave me, I don't know, I remember the way he said it. He said, ever since I was a baby, no one has touched me. Can you imagine? These are the kind of things that are being said out there,
Yeah.
And when you hear this out, you realize that you obviously, I think these kind of forums where you are able to have these conversations, communities that you can build where they all are able to feel less lonely because they have support. And then of course content, Be a Manyard actually came out of that idea. How do we create this idea where can we have famous, well-known people being vulnerable, men being vulnerable and emotional on camera? And you've been supportive of that. You've given us a grant to make that happen. And really, I don't even know if people know that. Be a Manyard has really happened because of like Rohini and the grant that they've given us. But I want to ask you that question, Rohini, now. Why did you feel, given there's so many issues that you could be focusing on and you could have been funding, why did men's mental health and especially young boys and men become a topic area for you that was so important that you had to really fund it in this way?
Yeah, so I'll fill you in, Rahul. One of my portfolios in my philanthropy is gender. And in gender, we work with young men and boys. Usually people will work with women. But when I was working in water and other things, we were usually working with women. And as I was going around the country, I would see a lot of young men and boys who didn't seem to be part of the conversation and were having very different sets of problems. And I began to research on it and found that actually we really need to worry about the mental health, confidence, self-esteem of 1 billion young males in the world today and at least 100 million in India. Because if we don't look at what is bothering men, especially young men, who are constantly thopified with responsibility, okay? And they're always insecure, and today they're even more insecure. Not all of them, not Rahul, but... but
not me also, I just want to specify.
This one also. Yeah. But many others, because the future of work has also become very uncertain. And 40, 50 years of marvelous government policy in our country has allowed young women to get something which has been their due for centuries. So they're a little bit moving ahead. Their girlfriend might be able to get a better job. Their wife might have a better job. The future of work is uncertain. They don't necessarily have role models like Rahul in their life. And it's really difficult. And to look at young men with empathy for the young man is not what society has done well. And that's why the experience that he's been talking about. So that's why we focus on this. When we started, there was one organization working. Today, we have 18 partners. And the call to action is we need much more philanthropic capital, private capital, and public empathy coming into this space. This is not against women. I'm a woman. Not against women. But this is for men to allow us all to be more human. Don't want to leave Rahul out for so long.
I want to ask.
But I just want to ask him.
No, I just want to say, I think it's phenomenal that you all are doing this, and Rohini and you and your team, I think, it's just incredible what you all are doing, because I really think it's been a need for an hour for a long time, and it's only going to get tougher and tougher, and as we go on in this day and age, it gets more and more difficult. Even from a personal thing for myself, we only look at always the kind of sportsmen and the cricketers who do well, right, to succeed. You've called me on here because I've had a certain level of success in the sport. But even someone like me, right, I mean, I've played India under-19, and two of those boys, I mean, the most talented. So we were an India under-19 team, and they're two of the best 15 cricketers of that time in India. Two of those boys have committed suicide from that team. It so saddens me so much, right, from two of my friends, guys I played under-19 cricket with over the years. And sometimes you feel, right, that, I mean, there was no support, or they might have not have been help, but a lot of these issues, I mean, especially as young men or as sportsmen, you deal with so many of these issues, and sometimes you just, it leads to disastrous consequences, as has led to two of the most talented under-19 kids of my generation. It happened much later in their lives, when unfortunately their cricketing careers didn't pan out the way mine did, or some of my other colleagues did, and it's really sad and it's heartbreaking. But so I'm really glad that there's more attention to it. There's a lot more conversation certainly around it, even in the sporting field today. I think people are a lot more open about these things in the sporting field. Men and women, so boys and girls, are more open about talking about these things, looking to seek some help. There's a little bit of support around that, a little bit better, and that needs to constantly improve and constantly get better for both boys and girls. And like Rohini said, that sometimes we need to also think that there are boys who also can struggle with these things.
But how do you prepare them? As a coach, how do you prepare the people you coach for failure? Exactly what do you have to do?
like I said, Ryan, I think a lot of it is about conversations, right? I think it's about trying to have conversations and being there to support maybe being a voice that can listen at times. You can't solve all the problems, and you know, as a coach, you have only a certain limited area of influence, and you're also dealing with them for a short period of time in a very competitive environment. So I always like to really encourage a lot of our young players to find support systems around them that can help them and support them in these things. You know, good support systems. Actually actively going out and finding people who they can bounce off ideas or they can talk to or have conversations with. I think is very, very important, you know, having that. And then I think finding success can't only be that I should be in the Indian team or I should be in the state team or something. I think you've got to find success from many, many other things. And you know, that's the only way to deal with this, I think.
I love what you said over here, you know, that success doesn't only have to be about that one goal that you had, right? That's a lot of conversations I also have with a lot of the young men that I meet on my roadshows, Rohini, that don't define that one milestone for yourself and almost postpone your happiness, which is what a lot of young boys do. Once I get there, then I'll be happy. You know, that's not what happiness or, you know, or contentment, let's say, has to be almost a daily practice, you know, where you have to find that contentment around you. And you can be successful as a husband, as a brother, as a son, as a person who's taking care of the fitness sometimes, you know, or writing something that you're really inspired by. You know, I'll add one thing to the point that you made earlier, Rohini, which is that, you know, a lot of the conversation that we are now having in gender is the fact that, and fortunately so, right, that after very long time and a lot of marginalization, we have started recognizing now that obviously women don't just need to be nurturers, they can also be providers. On the other hand, and it is so unfortunate, we still don't have an understanding that even men can be nurturers and not just providers. Yeah. And nurturing doesn't just mean to be others, right? It can also be to yourself, yes. You know, and it leads unfortunately to, you know, sometimes self-harm as Rahul spoke about, and a lot of times violence against others. Absolutely. Because there is no concept of nurturing. And speaking of that, because Rahul, you also spoke a little bit about you know, the conversations that happen sometimes. I was actually, you know, I did a conversation with Shreyas Iyer last year, and I asked him, you know, when you feel low and you had a bad day, who do you really go to? And he took your name. You know, he said, my coach, Rahul Dravid, any one of the young players, whenever they feel like they're having a low day, they go to you and have coffee with you, and there's always something that you have to offer to them that really supports. I want to know about these coffees, you know. What do you tell them? What is it that you are able to tell these young boys who are going through, as you said earlier as well, a lot more pressure that's not just on the cricket field but also beyond it? Anything that you can also guide the people over here, since, you know, we don't have coffee with you, but we have this session.
The first thing I do with the kind of money they're making, I make them pay for the coffee.
Love that.
No, I think, look, I think a variety of conversations. I think one of the things as a coach, you just really have to try and have an open door policy, which is, you know, you just want to keep your door open, or when you mean an open door, it's just a figurative, that in terms of, you know, you want people to be able to come in and access, and we say that, right, with any of our coaches and our support staff, if you really want to come and chat and talk about things, and a lot of guys have variety of issues to talk about, right? I think, you know, people might think from the outside that, oh, somebody playing in the Indian team is always happy and he's got so much success, he should be happy. But, you know, he's going through a lot of pressures himself. Somebody's not picked in the playing 11. That could be a disappointment. Somebody misses out on one particular tour or one particular team. You know, so there is that level of pressure. There's a pressure of expectation. You're watching other people performing in the same team that you're playing in. You also want to perform like them. So there's a lot of pressure in those environments as well. And I think, you know, just from my perspective, it's really being able to connect with some of these guys and just to listen to them and hear them out. And I think trying to be as honest as I can about, you know, about the decisions that we take. You know, a lot of times the conversations would be, okay, why did you not pick me in this team, or what can I do to improve? And I think all you can do is give honest answers as much as you possibly can, and try and give them a support system around which you think that, you know, that you're not only giving them honesty, but you're also trying to help them improve. You know, it's not only saying, okay, we didn't pick you, but okay, this is the reason why we didn't pick you, and this is what we're trying to do to help you maybe get back into the team at a later date. So, yeah, I mean, a lot of these conversations, sometimes it's just fun. It's just lovely to interact with some of these young guys. I think I've really enjoyed some of the conversations I had. I've learned a lot from a lot of them, I think. I think one of the things, you go into these conversations thinking that, hey, I'm the one expected to actually say something wise and meaningful. That's a pressure on you at times, but actually walk away from thinking, shucks, man, I've learned something here. This is, it's a very different way of looking at things, or a very different way of seeing things from some of these younger guys. So I think a lot of these conversations were as beneficial to me as maybe I'm hoping it was to some of them.
Thank you for that. It's so lovely to hear. We have a lot of audience questions that we got that I want to read out. But at the end, I just want to ask, since both of you have been people who have opened these spaces up for others, who is in your life, who is that safe space to you? When you need coffee, who do you go to?
I don't know, at the moment, Vijita, I think, would be someone. We have our more normal routine in the morning of having our coffee together. So yeah, I'd have to say Vijita's probably the one that I lean.
The immediate clapping started happening with the women. They were just like, yes.
Now I have to say Nandan, yeah. But I'll tell you.
That's why I answered the question first.
Yeah,
so if she had said Nandan and I had said Vijita, then Vijita would have said, you only said Vijita because... So
No, but the fact is Nandan is my go-to. He's my sounding board. I have coffee with him. Sometimes I throw coffee at him. But he's my man. He's my person.
That's really
he
sweet.
supports me in spite of everything. And he's here somewhere. And now he won't fight with me for several days. Actually, he never fights. I'm the one who fights, but maybe I'll get permission to fight for a few more days after having said that. But I do want to say thank you before you open to Rahul. Rahul, really, thank you, because I just called him and said, we are doing this thing. Will you come and talk about mental health and issues like that? He didn't hesitate for even a quarter of a second, like he doesn't when the ball comes at him.
Thank you. Thanks, Rohini, for having me, and thank you for the phenomenal work that you do. I think this is really phenomenal. Yeah.
I mean, I just want to say...
I want to try and be a journalist. I'm not that good as both of you. I just want to ask one question. So, I just want to ask Rohini this. So, what's your message to some of the young boys and girls here who might look at this and say, I can't be Rohini Nilekani, and I don't have the kind of resources and the funds she has to make this kind of difference, but I want to do something. And you can only feel happy and you can only contribute when you are someone. I'm sure there are people who will think like that, it's easy for...
If you hadn't been successful at cricket, you could have become a journalist. You're asking good questions, yeah.
It's such a heartfelt question he's asked. Such a beautiful question.
No, it is a very good question. No, I don't agree that you have to be successfulness. I mean, it's not like you have to fit the common norms of success to be happy. And you don't even have to be wealthy to be happy. And I'm not just saying that as a wealthy person that says, you are wealthy, nice, you can say things like that. But there is more than enough research to say that beyond a point, there's diminishing utility of wealth. And I have never believed that it's only wealth that allows me to do what he calls empathy work. When the first thing I did when we didn't have wealth was to support 2 girls' scholarship. And that must have definitely made a difference to their lives. All of us can do something. You don't need wealth to make social change. Just a few people get together with a societal mission and you can make change. You don't need wealth. Wealth is useful, but not the only thing. Definitely not.
We've got some questions that people had written earlier for both of you, and there's a range of them. So I'm going to start with the one that I've loved the most, and this is a genuine question, Rohini. I'm not lying that this is in this. So I'm just going to ask because this is the best question that I have right now. What made you fall in love with Nandan? That's an actual question that we've been asked, and I can't not ask that now.
I must admit that I think now I realize that I fell in love with his good mental health. He was so cool. He was the coolest cat. He had very strange hair and he used to wear Hawaii chappals, and my mother didn't think he was cool because he was in IIT and he didn't care about how he looked. But now I can realize it on this mental health festival. I think I fell in love first with his marvelous brain and his good heart.
That's really sweet and really wholesome. Rahul, for you, there's a question. Why do you dislike Instagram, and when will you come on it?
I don't dislike it or anything. I mean, let's get it that way. I just don't. I've grown up in a different generation, and I just don't really feel the need of getting on social media or spending my time on social media. I've seen, because I've worked with a lot of young people in the course of my career, and I've just seen the kind of impact it's had on a lot of them, right? I just see it on a daily basis, just the need to constantly looking in it, constantly needing to be on it. And so I don't know, I don't actually have a good answer. To be very honest with you, I do not have a good answer as to why. I just don't feel the need of it. I just don't feel the need of being on Instagram or of making already a lot of my profession has been very public. Like as a person, I'm not a very public person. I am quite a private person. I've always been, even as a kid. And so a lot of my profession and what I've chosen to do has been public, right? I've played all my cricket publicly. I coach, and it's very public. And so the rest of it, I just try and keep it very private, and we don't really try and open that up to too many people other than like really few close family and friends.
I wish we were like you, Rahul. I really wish like we could also have that within us. Yeah, pretty much that restraint within us.
No, and look, again, I don't want to judge people who are doing it, because there are people who actually need social media for their professions, for their lives, to advance themselves. It's been like, I've seen the positive side of it, right? It's given a voice to so many people who probably wouldn't have had a voice in the past, right? So there's not all bad things. It's just that I've been lucky that maybe I don't need it in my profession, or I don't need it. And so I've not felt the need to do it.
Fair enough. I must point out that I have a digital media company, so I'm not shitting on this either. I love Instagram, for anyone listening, especially if Meta is over here. Rohini, if you were a sports person, what sport would you play?
The only cricket I played was French cricket. Can I play that?
We'll make that a profession. We'll make that a career.
Bat around your body.
With the number of leagues there are, we can have French cricket league also.
Can you explain what exactly that is for those who don't know?
You're very young. When you play French cricket, you take if somebody throws a ball at you and then you hit it, then you take your runs by moving your bat.
Well done. It's really cool.
It's the first time I've been on stage and someone said you were very young. So thank you, Rohini. But I have played that actually, but I just didn't know what it was called. Okay, Rahul, we have a question. I mean, we've got some really nice questions actually for you. What is the difference between Gen Z and millennial sports person? It's a great question.
So Gen Z is like after 2000, no? Huh?
After 1987.
After 1987 is?
1997.
Is Gen Z.
Yes.
And millennium is what? Before
that, yeah. Well, like 20 years before that.
Okay. What's the difference? I think the cricketers of today are a lot more confident. They believe in themselves a lot more. The opportunities and the exposure that a lot of them have had is much more than I think the cricketers of an earlier generation. They're fitter, they're faster, they're stronger. The only thing I'd say is that for a lot of them, I think the challenges come from dealing with sometimes instant success. I think in an earlier generation, if you wanted to be respected and sort of, I hate using the word success, but you wanted to think about doing a body of work or be recognized for a body. You needed a body of work to be recognized in an earlier generation. Today, because there's so much of hype and media around things, you can actually be recognized or for even a few small things. Like instantly you can get recognized in one evening, one afternoon. And I think that's a challenge to deal with, because then it can affect sometimes your hunger or your desire, right? Because, oh, I've achieved it, I'm already great. Yeah. But, I think it took a long time to achieve that in an earlier generation and era. And it forced you sometimes to stay on track a little bit longer. Not saying that everyone's like that, and there are guys on this generation who will also, go on to have very, very long and big careers as well. But it is easier to get, I think, diverted in this generation.
There's a question which is very similar to what you're speaking of. How has your family dealt with your fame? Very nice question. How have they coped with the sudden success that you're talking about that must have happened at some point?
So it's been, I think you're really grateful. I mean, I'm really grateful to my family because they are the ones who've had to make the sacrifices. And, I've become famous. I've done something I love. I'm playing the sport. I'm coaching the sport that I love. But my family sometimes had to deal with all of that without having the thing of doing something that they truly love, right? And I think for Vijita, for my parents even, or even for my children, you're really grateful for that, for the sacrifices they've made, right? I think their lives have become public thanks to me, or, so there's so many things that go with the irritation of being married to or being a family member of a famous person, right? I think there's a loss of privacy, there's so many things, and you're very grateful for the fact that they have dealt with the challenges as well as they possibly can, and there are challenges, no doubt, and yeah, all I can say is that, yeah, I think they've dealt with it really well, and hopefully, yeah.
I remember sometimes I bump into Rahul in the Kabini forest. We both are wildlife lovers. And Rahul and Vijeta were in the jeep next to me, and I was here, and there's a beautiful tigress walking by, and I'm very excited, and everybody else in the jungle is saying, Rahul Dravid, Rahul Dravid, Rahul Dravid, and Vijeta is just saying, that's how it is.
I just saying that sometimes, like, stuff on your children as well, right? I think children like to grow up in anonymity when you're young, and they're better, they understand it now, but when your children are younger, they just can't understand why people will crowd around you, or, so we've had to have conversations with them, or we've had to talk to them about it, but, I'm grateful they seem to have turned out okay, so it's all them.
I just want to say that this last question was by the only person who's written their name. This was by Bhargavi, who has said big fan and then put hearts over there. Oh, she's also, I just wanted to point out that. I wanted
Rohini, that was for you, by the way. That is.
Yeah, of course.
Rohini, given that we have spoken about Gen Z versus millennial sports people, do you see a difference in Gen Zs and millennials at the workplace? And maybe also specifically around mental health, but even general, if there's anything you would like to say.
No, I have a very young team, and they teach me a lot of lessons every day, but actually, I'm very sorry, I don't have a good answer to that. I was told that, Gen Z are the older ones or the younger ones?
The younger ones.
Correct.
The oldest Gen Z today is 27.
I was told, now I don't know, and any Gen Z in my office, this is not about you. I was told that you cannot, I don't know. Apparently, you cannot tell them something straight. Suppose you want to tell them, hey, you messed up. Apparently, you can't tell them that. You have to tell them, your clothes are looking so nice today. And yesterday, the email you sent me was right on the ball. And you messed up. I don't know if that's true. That's what I was told.
No, you have to sandwich it also. At the end of that, you have to also say that, wow, but you are amazing.
You are still...
So you have to... So you like, apparently that's what I've been told. You sandwich it, otherwise gone.
Sandwich. Beach me, darling.
Not like in our time. Just, you are rubbish, buddy.
There seems to be some sort of PTSD about this with you, Rahul. Have you faced this quite often as a coach? You don't have to take names, but if you want to, you can.
You have to be very conscious of how you communicate your message.
Has anyone ever called you out for this is bad for my mental health, the way you're talking to me? I don't know.
I can think of a few people. I'm not going to name them.
You don't have to name. I'm just...
Yeah, I'm pretty bad for a few people's mental health, yeah.
Okay. Fair enough. Rahul, have you ever been... Has any younger teammate communicated to you that...
Koi to hoga na. Must be one.
No, all the time. I mean, like I said, every time I pick a cricket team and you pick 15 guys, you pick 11. It's not really great for the 4 guys who are not playing. So that's the sad part of what I do. I think every time, you have to...
That's hard.
Accept
it. This is a good question. Rohini, what made you decide to become a funder?
I came into money. I didn't know what to do with it.
Not everyone who has money, Rohini, actually, and this is a good question to ask because, not everyone, and there's so many wealthy people in the world, but not everyone actually does philanthropy. Not everyone thinks about...
I find it very exciting. And to be honest, it also gives a lot of joy. Let's be very clear. Many people who give also thoroughly enjoy the giving, right? So it releases endorphins in your neural circuits that we can ask NIMHANS and NCBS, but about the joy of giving. That's one feedback, but that's one positive feedback loop. But also, families matter, no? My grandfather is a big icon in my life. I never met him, he died before I was born. But he gave up, his law practice, he would try to settle things out of court with his client, saying, why do you want to take it to court? And therefore, he never got his fees. But he gave of himself to this country. He died just before independence, but worked for 30 years to make sure that we had our freedoms. And if you have something like that in your life that you look up to, then it makes you want a little bit to live up to it.
Beautiful. There is, again, a question that's very similar to this. Someone's asked that, we all look up to you. Who are the people that inspire you? Who are the people you look up to currently?
So who are the people I look up to? In a sense, like I've always kind of, in a sense, I've always looked up to sportsmen over the years, like people like Gavaskar. These were just role models, I guess, of cricketers and heroes of mine, Gavaskar or a Vishwanath or a Kapil Dev. I grew up in that generation. So these were the kind of people that I kind of looked up to. I think my parents, in a lot of ways, were a big influence on who I was and who I became. Always looked up to them in many ways. In this, just giving a sporting example again, I think in this generation, I think, I've always really looked up to these three tennis players. I think Djokovic, Federer, and Nadal. Not for the great achievements. I think their achievements have been great, but I just really admired the way that they've carried themselves with each other, in their relationships with each other. It's just shown me that you can be that excellent and you can compete, but you can still have some grace, you can still have some class, and you can, carry yourself really, really well. And then I think, some of the other people that I think I kind of always sort of look up to is over the years, there's so many people who do things, like simple things that we think of as simple things, but will never necessarily get the credit for it, right? You could think of any profession, right? You think of some of the doctors or nurses or anyone in public life, or so many things over the years. There are people who do so many things that make a big difference, small things, simple things, that never, you'll never really get the credit for it. You'll never get the credit for it. And what they're doing is not lesser than, like, potentially what someone has done, just because what he's doing is more in the public space, right? A cricket player or an actor or someone who's a, really big industrialist. Their achievements or their what they're doing gets really recognized, because it's in the public space. Of course, their failures also get equally recognized and highlighted a lot more than as much as their successes do. But there are other people, who, in a sense, are doing great work, but they're really anonymous in that sense. And I think that is absolutely phenomenal, for what they do, and that is in a lot of ways a big inspiration.
Support staff and a cricket, in a cricket
team, right? Our masseur in the team, or our masseur in our team, our physiotherapists, our trainers. So many of them, you won't see their photographs. The guy who's looking after our security, you won't see their photographs in that photo that you showed, but incredible contributions as well. So, and incredible hard work as well. A lot of hard work that these people put in. So I think that's a great inspiration as well.
Big cheers to them. Again, and there's a question that someone's asked me, so I'm going to, someone's written over here, who is the current Indian cricketer that you admire? We always talk about looked up to almost from a lens of, it has to be older people, but it can also be younger people. So anyone from the current Indian team that you kind of look up to for any reason?
Oh, a lot of them, I think, without mentioning one, I think this is a...
They've asked for one.
Fantastic era. I know it is...
You can mention one. You can mention two if you want.
The wall is not going to fall like that.
I think just, I know on a day like today, it's probably a good thing to say this, because, I know we've suffered a big loss today, and it's probably disappointing losing a test series after such a long time today. But I think the fact that, the last 10, 12 years, the kind of successes that we've had, and how used to we have got used to almost being successful at cricket, is a great tribute to this whole generation of cricketers. I mean, whether it's a Virat, Rohit, Ashwin, Jadeja, Bumrah now. I mean, 5, 6 or 7 of these guys are going to end up being legends of the game. And I think the fact that we are so shocked and surprised that we lost is a great tribute to all of them, and it's a great tribute to this team. So, yeah, I think all of these guys, are great.
Beautifully said. That's really lovely. Rohini, someone's asked, how does Rohini manage her stress? I don't know, someone really wants to know your particular stress mechanism.
Okay.
You also seem like you seem to have a handle on it, which is amazing, because every time I've also spoken to you, you always seem like things don't faze you.
No. Oh my God, I get irritated with everything. So my family is in the room, so let's not go there. But I'll tell you, I love to, when life is stressing me out too much, I escape into the jungle. And I find being in nature stabilizes me back to come back and be a little all right. So that's one thing. I love music. I like classical music. I love reading. I love the most, he's going to get so embarrassed when he gets older, but being with my grandson. Anything is happening to me, if I'm with my grandson, who's soon going to be 8 years old, that's it. I become all right again. I recommend all of you have at least one grandchild.
A lot of young people today are still trying to figure love kahan mil raha hai. Aap grandson ki baat kar rahi ho. That's another thing that's really, see that number of people. That's another thing I keep hearing on the road show. कि कोई है नहीं date करने के लिए, and you're talking grandchildren.
It's very sad.
It's quite triggering, I must say, in a mental health conference.
I suggest you get a partner first, then we can.
Yeah, exactly. Let them go step by step, I feel. Okay. This is a lovely question, Rahul, for you. How have you coped with fame and failure with so much grace? And this, I'd love to know, so much grace.
Oh God. I don't know. I've not. It's not like there's some formula or I've thought of this is how I need to do this or this is what I want to do. Like I said, I've seen a lot of failure in my life. I think that has been that's been one of the things that has really grounded me. The sport has taught me a lot of failure. It's taught me how to deal with it. I've seen really, for all the highs, I've seen some incredible lows as well in my career, very public lows as well, I think, so that sort of humbles you in a lot of ways. I think I've been very lucky again with my family. I think, I think just the balance in the family and just having that support network around me, some family and friends, really, really helped me cope with all of this.
I'm actually going to ask because, I feel, Rahul, grace is also a choice. It's a choice you make, A lot of people choose not to be graceful.
Hey, that's a really good quote, okay? Grace is a choice. Kya baat hai?
Thank you. No, but it genuinely feels like it, right? Because especially when you're seeing, and we've seen sports people who have gotten angry, who've gotten aggressive, who are not necessarily great on the field sometimes. You've always been graceful, whether it is success, whether it is defeat. So what makes you choose that each time?
So if I answer this question without saying that I've also thrown the cap on the ground in a match. So it's not that I've always been like that. So again, I think even through my career and I mean, if you've been a career for so long and been a coach for long, there are times where, to be very honest with you, I have lost it. I have, behaved in a manner that was probably inappropriate for the team or inappropriate for myself. It's not, I don't think at any stage that I've been perfect and I've never made a mistake, and I think, I've done that, I've made quite a few mistakes. They might not have come out publicly, but as and when you just try your best, and I think even when you make the mistakes, you can't beat yourself down on those mistakes. You have to accept it, right? You're going to make some mistakes. And so for me, it's never been about trying to be, it's not some effort I'm trying to make. Just trying to be what I think is right and do what I think is right and accept the fact that sometimes I'll make some mistakes. Yeah? And I don't, I want to say that, I will make mistakes and we'll move on, we'll learn from it, and we'll get on with it. But yeah, I don't want to put this pressure on myself that you've always got to be graceful and you've always got to be this. I want to have moments like I can scream sometimes and throw my cap on the ground and not have people say, oh, boss, you said you'll always be graceful.
I just want to say that answer was so graceful. So, I mean, it's clearly natural to you. We have, I actually have one quick rapid fire but there's this really nice question over here. No, nothing scary, don't worry about that. Someone's asking for someone who's hoping to be a sports person like you, Rahul, what's a key piece of advice that you would like to give to a teenager who wants to be a sports person today?
Key piece of advice to teenager. Firstly, that it should be your choice. You want to be a sportsman, that should be 100% your choice, your commitment. You should want to do it and not do it. And you should love what you do. Don't do it because your parents want you to do it. Don't do it because it will make you famous. Don't do it because you want to be rich. Do it because you just truly love whatever sport that you want to play. Because if you don't do that, it's really hard. It gets really hard as you get higher and higher. And keep learning, keep growing, keep learning. I think, the learning never stops as a sportsman. You've got to look to improve. You constantly look to get better. You've got to constantly learn and enjoy it. Enjoy the sport. Love the sport.
I love that. Thank you so much for that. And this is a question I would ask both of you. This is the final question from that segment. How do you stay focused in a world that has so many distractions?
Okay, Nandan taught me at least to try and separate the signal from the noise. And I try to do that. I don't always succeed, but try to see how can I try to be effective at what I love and try at least not to get distracted by it. So stay with what you're doing, keep learning, deepening what you're doing, and then other things distract you a little less.
It's lovely.
How do you stay focused? I think just being clear about what you're doing and what it is that you're doing at that point of time and what is your main focus and what is your goal. And I think segmenting it, knowing that when I'm here, then this is what I'm focused on and this is what I'm doing. And then being able to kind of switch off as best as you can and move to what you're doing. When you're at home, then you're trying to be at home, and when you're at coaching or when you're at work, then you're coaching. I think just being able to find that boundaries helps you be focused.
Make it sound so easy.
Hey, what's
Rahul.
your resting heart rate? Yeah, maybe we should.
Yeah, I'm like, he makes it sound so easy. Like
it's not easy. I mean, I'm not saying
Dr.
that it's
Murthy,
easy.
we have to do some scans on this man.
The resting heart rate is too high at the moment. The problem with all these wearable things now, they tell you too much, man. They tell you just too much. Actually, this adds to your stress as well. All these things that they keep telling you.
Okay, quick rapid fire. 3 questions asked. One piece of mental health advice that you'd like to give everyone. One great piece of mental health advice you've received in your life.
Mental health piece of advice I've received is don't take yourself too seriously and meditate. So that's something that I have always done. One piece of advice that I'd like to give be the same that I received, I think.
There was one big fan of meditation who just clapped once to say yes, meditation.
Ditto.
Oh. Okay, great. Well, that's a good one in any case. One grounding exercise or well-being practice that personally helps each of you.
I love the forest, like Rohini said. I think going into nature, forests, walks, that really helps.
For me, really nature, really. From even a tiny ant to a mighty elephant, I can learn something from every time.
That's beautiful. What's the one thing we can do as citizens to help create safer, kinder spaces and more mental health positive spaces around us? What's the one thing that you would advise?
I think just being kind to people. I think as an individual, I think just being kind and empathic to people in your daily interactions, I think would really, really help. Whoever you are, whatever you are, if you're just kind and empathetic, really makes a big difference. Obviously, people like Rohini are doing fantastic work, on a larger scale, supporting them, helping them. They're doing the big ticket stuff, but even at our own levels, just basic kindness, decency, empathy go a long way in helping a lot of other people with their mental health, rather than making it difficult for other people.
I would say be kind to yourself. It's not so easy. And that's very, very important. And even I still have to remind myself every day. When we are kind to ourselves, we can be kind to others. Because hurt people. And if we learn that about ourselves, I think it's much easier to be empathetic in the world.
I want to ask the opposite of the question. What can we do as citizens to not create terrible spaces? Because a lot of us end up doing that, creating toxic, terrible spaces.
I don't know. He knows about that. I don't know anything about that.
Yeah, I think in whatever environment you find yourself in, I think, I think that's the beauty of teams, I think one of the things as a coach is that you're really trying to create a really good team environment. I think that's the whole beauty of what being a coach is that can you influence your environment to make it a safe environment, but a challenging environment? You want your environments to be safe. You want people not to fear failure or be worried about being in those environments or scared of being in those environments. But you also don't want to make them soft, right? You want to challenge them. You want to push them. You want to see that they get the best out of their potential. And that's the fine balance you always need to drive as a coach. And yeah, so that's what I've tried to do.
And the final question, sorry?
No, keep communication channels open. That's it.
I love that. Thank you. Final question. What's a mental health advice that you know that you should be following that you both don't follow? Let's be honest. Let's have one confession before we leave.
Yeah, I think I should certainly worry. I should worry less about things that I can't control. I think there are things I know that I actually don't have too much control over, but I still stress and worry about them.
Ditto.
All right.
Can you come with me everywhere?
Okay, on that note, for me it's Instagram, by the way. I need to use less Instagram. I love Instagram, but I need to use less of it. On that note, thank you so much, Rohini, Rahul. This was incredible.
Thank you very much. Thanks. Thank you.
So honest.
Thank you. Thanks for the good
And thank you so much, Nikhil, for also hosting this conversation. This has been wonderful. Everyone, you've been a lovely audience. I also just want to take an opportunity to say that this conversation was incredibly real, and it really made me feel that we all go through the same things and we're all in it together. So, as we sort of welcome the speakers off the stage, please, for now.
So I just want to do one Gen Z thing, which is take a selfie with the whole auditorium.
Okay, sure, sure.
We must.
All right, thank you so much.